an absolute pleasure to be here, and I want to say congratulations to everyone who's worked so hard, not just over the past few days to make this conference a success, but over the years that have passed in order to have an effective women's conference that's policy making. Congratulations to all of them. And it's a testament to how strong our movement has become that there are 700 delegates here representing the hundreds of thousands of women now engaged in our party. And to me, it's wonderful to come home to Telford. Because as you know, this is an area that I grew up in, where I first became involved in the Labour Party and in politics through the Wrekin Young Socialists, where we made a complete nuisance of ourselves every month at the meetings of the General Management Committee, and we placed a red flag on the top of the Wrekin when we won the constituency. And if you've got time, I urge you to climb the Wrekin. We also organised a hunger strike outside the tax office in Telford to protest against the 1971 Immigration Act. That was the Young Socialists working with the And so I have a very special affection for Telford, and I would like you also to thank Telford for making you all so welcome, but also the support they've given to this conference and the welcome that they've given to all visitors to Telford. It's a great place. But I'm going to be back here again many times, because I am absolutely determined that Telford returns a Labour MP, and that Labour MP is going to be Katrina Gilman. Katrina is an amazing campaigner and an amazing raconteur. She could be a stand-up comic, or she could be a politician, or she could be a politician with a sense of humour. And I want to be a politician with a sense of humour, and she's absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to be very happy supporting her to get her elected. But she's following in the footsteps of a woman MP, Dame Edith Picton-Turberville, who was elected for the Wrekin in 1929. Very early for a woman to be elected to Parliament by the Labour Party. And I think we should just remember the sacrifices that were made by people, not just to get women the right to vote, but also to get any women's representation in the Labour Party in those years. And Edith Picton-Turberville was elected for the Wrekin, and she's still remembered by names and so on around the place. So the sense of history is very important. You may know I've just come from a wonderful rally in Broxtowe, but before that, well, I'll say this about Broxtowe, it was absolutely brilliant. Loads of people turned up, great speeches from Emily Thornberry, from Gloria Di Piero, and from Richard Bergen, and from Greg Marshall, our candidate there. Labour is strong, and we're going to win in Broxtowe, and we're going to win all across the East Midlands and the West Midlands. But before that, I've just come from Madrid, where I met European socialist leaders, including Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain. And before that, I was in Brussels, where I had very good discussions with Michel Barnier and others on behalf of the Labour Party. We all agree that a no-deal crash would be a disaster that we have to avoid in the negotiations over the EU. Labour has an alternative plan, which we put forward. I put it forward in a letter to Theresa May, we put it forward in Parliament. 4, a permanent customs union with the EU, a strong single market relationship, and not just to defend the regulations we've won on workers' rights, consumer protection and environmental standards, but to go further and strengthen them. This plan is credible and could be negotiated with the EU. So the Prime Minister must stop trying to run down the clock in an attempt to blackmail Parliament with a threat of the chaos of no deal or supporting her deal. There is a credible deal on the table. It's the Labour alternative, which will bring people together and guarantee protections and jobs for a serious and sensible relationship in the future. And we will be putting that to Parliament over the next few days. I also want to take a few moments to address what's happened in politics this week, and it's been a very interesting week indeed. Actually, to be quite honest with you, every week's a really interesting week. You never know what's coming from where. But let's think about this for a moment. Over the last few years, Labour's membership has grown dramatically and set our party on a new course. I understand why that's been difficult for some people. As leader of the party, it's necessary, of course, to listen to concerns of our MPs as well as our members and our affiliates. And I do that all the time. We're always open to discussion and debate. That is the lifeblood of democratic politics. Absolutely what we exist for. So I'm very disappointed that a small number of Labour MPs have decided to leave our party and join forces with a small group of disaffected Tories. Those disaffected Tories assured us they had no problem with austerity that has plunged so many into desperate poverty and insecurity. That's not what their constituents voted for. They were elected on a Labour manifesto which said something very, very different. So I think they should do the decent and democratic thing and put themselves up. Our programme for change won huge support in the general election. Huge support. Because we offered hope. Instead of the same old establishment demands, cuts, privatisation and austerity, and making the working class pay for the banking crisis of 2008. So that's why we now back public ownership of mail, rail and water, because we believe that's the right thing to do. And why we oppose tuition fees in universities and college and adult education. And tax giveaways to big corporations. And we're no longer afraid, simply say this, that the rich need to pay their fair share of tax, and we will raise tax for the biggest corporations and the 5% of the wealthiest in this country in order to improve the life chances and living standards of the rest. It doesn't seem that extreme. Our movement, the Labour movement, is the greatest force for progressive change this country has ever known. We created the National Health Service. We created the welfare state. We brought in the Equal Pay Act in 1970. And every piece of anti-racist legislation of the 20th century has come from a Labour government. We introduced the minimum wage and the world's first Climate Change Act. We, the Labour Party, are a movement of 500,000 people in every city and town of the whole country, and villages and small communities as well. We're your neighbours, your colleagues and your friends, fighting the same battles alongside you because we are part of your community, standing up for your interests, the interests of the many, not the few. We do not stand for the rich and powerful, we stand for you. If you're being ripped off by high bills and expensive private sector housing, we stand for you. If you're working all hours for wages that barely stretch to the end of the month, we stand for you. If you believe in what our country can be when we support and value each other, we are with you. Conference. Sisters, Labour is the party of equality, the party of women. Theresa May's hostile environment policy led to the shocking treatment of the Windrush generation. But for many women, a hostile environment is something they face every day in public life, in the social security system and in the immigration system. It's the most marginalised women in society who bear the brunt of it. Working class women, BME women, disabled women, LGBT women and migrant women. Undocumented migrant women are now being forced to pay upfront charges for antenatal and maternity care in our NHS, risking the lives of babies and their mothers. And the conditions women are forced to endure at migrant detention centres such as Yarlswood and Brookhouse are, quite honestly, a national disgrace. Last year, Diane Abbott and Shami Chakrabarti gained access to Yarlswood. It was not easy, and they were shocked by the stories that they heard. And I thank them for the work they do, day in, day out, for justice and equality, and Diane is a fantastic spokesperson for Home Affairs and will be an absolutely brilliant Home Secretary, as will show me History will judge us on how we treat the powerless, not the powerful. Indefinite detention flies in the face of liberty and demeans us all. So let's be clear, Labour will close Yarlswood and Brook House and end the scandal of these women's treatment. And we will take the £21 million currently paid to Serco, which operates these centres, and use it to support women who've endured trafficking, slavery and domestic violence. Priorities should lie, helping women who've been through, frankly, hell. Women also face a hostile environment in the social security system. There's a lot of competition, but the Tories have the Tories done anything more disgusting than introduce the rape clause? Making women prove they've been raped to receive benefits for a child is absolutely abhorrent. The entire policy of limiting the child element of tax credits and universal credits to the first two children is unjustifiable, morally wrong, and frankly heartless. Great work from Margaret Greenwood and her team, and Margaret's here, in opposing that and working so hard to bring about justice for our social security system. And the women affected are more likely to be low paid and more exposed to the cruelty of universal credit. Putting the onus on low-paid workers to increase their income with more hours or a second job, even if they're already working more than 35 hours a week. Doesn't that just say everything about who the Tories really stand for? Here's an idea. Instead of punishing people who are struggling to make ends meet, why not get the employers to pay a living wage instead? And that's what the next Labour government will do. And why is it that types of work disproportionately performed by women that are absolutely vital to our society aren't valued as highly as those typically done by men? Take care work, for example. We ask people, care workers, to care for our loved ones. The people most precious to us in the world. People that we would do anything for. And then those workers are so disrespected, they're paid the minimum wage, and make them endure terrible working conditions, including sometimes not even being paid for travelling from one customer, one client to another. It's not good enough. We have to change the world of work so that women are not losing out before they even begin. As well as giving jobs like care work the esteem they deserve, that means taking on this idea that some jobs are for men and others are for women. I want it to be just as common to see women as engineers, or construction workers, or as carers. I'm proud that Dawn Butler, our Shadow Women and Equality Secretary, has announced that Labour will give all workers the right to flexible working from day one. Letting women choose hours that suit their lives and their commitments. Thank you, Dawn, for all the work you do on this. Something that is going to open up opportunities for so many women in our society. But there's another area in which women face a hostile environment, and that's in public life. There is no justification whatsoever for abuse of anybody. Absolutely none whatsoever. It's not our politics, it's not our agenda, it is completely wrong. Anti-Semitism, racism, far-right extremism, common abuse has no place whatsoever in our movement. And it's particularly bad for BME women. To see the depths of the problem you only have to look at the appalling levels of sexist and racist abuse that Diane has received online every single day, or the disgraceful attack on Paula Sherriff, Labour MP for Dewsbury, whose offices were plastered with swastikas. We won't tolerate a culture of hatred towards women in public life. You know what the best response is? To increase the representation of women in public life. So the next Labour government will be the first to have a gender-balanced cabinet, as we do a shadow cabinet. And we're working hard to achieve the same in the next Parliamentary Labour Party through all-women shortlists and selections that are still going on all around the country. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had at least a 50-50 balance in the next Parliament, in a Labour majority supporting a Labour government? Let me also say this. There's always room for disagreement and debate. There must be. We're a democratic party. But never, ever for abuse. And where it occurs, we will deal with it. Sadly, some men in our society still can't handle women expressing strong opinions. Well, we can send a message to those men from this conference that there are hundreds of you here and millions beyond, and you will not be silenced. And let's never forget our friend and comrade Joe Cox, murdered by a far-right fanatic motivated by intolerance and racism. Joe knew that our responsibility to support women doesn't stop at our borders. I'm determined that in government, Labour will implement the UK's first explicitly feminist international policy, as it says so on our brilliant pledge card. It's about international solidarity. I recently had a very long phone conversation with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And we had a very long discussion. I talked to her before she was elected, and much longer one since then. And she said to me this, that we have to build a movement that crosses borders to take on the billionaires, the polluters, the racists, and make a case for fair taxation, action on climate change, and the rights of migrants. She brings people together. She unites people. And I think she and so many others that are working so hard in the United States are the people we reach out to all over the world for a foreign policy that is based on peace, justice, and human rights. Conference. The mission of the Labour Party is to achieve equality for everyone in our society and beyond, regardless of gender, class, sexuality, or race. Because the oppression of one is actually an oppression of all. That's why we fight sexism. That's why we fight racism. And that's why we fight for a more equal society, where people's work is well paid and respected. And it's why we fight for women's voices to always be heard and ring out loud and clear. Because our socialism is about giving everyone a say in our society. That's how we'll transform this country. So we develop a society that is truly just. We have a mentality that reaches out to all and doesn't tolerate street sleeping or food banks or the horrible levels of poverty that austerity has brought about. We win an election to develop a society so it works for the many, not at the moment as it does just for the few. Conference, thank you for inviting me here today.